Jai Gurudev, and thank you for joining us today. So, the first ever Saptarishi Aarti, which has been an ancient parampara in Kashi, will be performed on 4th of December at 5:30 p.m. for 90 minutes till 7 p.m. in the presence of His Holiness Gurudev Shri Shri Abhishekaji. To discuss in detail, we have with us an art of living expert and an officer of the Vedic Dhamma Sansthan. So, why is the first ever Saptarishi Aarti in Kashi Parampara significant for this moment in 2025? Jagadev, the significance is cosmic and historical. Though the concept originates in Kashi, its essence is Vedic beyond geography. The Saptarishi, the Atri, the Bharadwaj, Vashishta, Vishwamitra, Gautama, Jamadagni, and Kashyap are mantra seers who sustain dharma through manvantaras. This arti is not merely a ceremony but a nightly invitation extended through lamps for the first time. It flows into a modern global spiritual epicenter in the living presence of a master. The flame symbolizes knowledge older than ignorance, the rotation mirrors celestial motion, and the silence after lamp viewing is the Rishi Mandala entry point. In 2025, students, faculty, world leaders, and seekers are stressed for marks, placements, and futures, invoking Rishi archetypes through light anchors, the jnana, compassion, discipline, peace, discrimination, power, expansion, and inner fire, or into one field. Hosting it in Gurudev's presence is symbolic Vedic return and visible mantra offered into silence, fulfilling the evening yajna of Kashi's metaphysical aim, purification, remembrance, gratitude, dissolution, liberation, and blessing exchange. Now, how is the ancient Saptarishi Aarti tradition and how ancient is it truly? Jagadev, its antiquity lies in the concept, not script. There are no surviving original lyrics, but the traditional predates the Puranic codification. It is first rooted in the Rig Veda. Through Ursa Major, Saptarks constellation in ancient Kashi, it was performed by Agnihotri Brahmins on Rita Vedis using terracotta ekmukhi or panchamukhi lamps with seven flames to honor the sages. Lamps, conch, bells, fragrance, and fire operated together, structured like a closing microyagya. The rotation followed Surya's apparent motion and star alignment astronomy. The aim was never personality worship but a cosmic wisdom offering. The seven flames were ascending prayer, shadows descending grace. Today, the ritual survives sublimated inside Ganga. Shiva Aartis and Tarpan Sankalpas, especially during Pitru Paksha and Guruvar, bringing it to a modern center does not make it new. It revives an unwritten Vedic form, illumination, invocation, dissolution. The rishis are scriptures as invisible flame. Lamps are visible mantra. Their union is eternal. Kashi preserved it silently. Now the silence speaks through light again. Now, what is the deeper metaphysical aim of holding a 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. Aarti window? The time mirrors the tricals in their spread, sun descending, stars preparing to rise. Ancient Kashi aligned the Aarti timing with solar star transitions. 5:30 p.m. evokes the Guru Tattva of Brihaspati principle, most receptive to knowledge offerings. The extended 1.5-hour span allows invocation to illumination, dissolution process to unfold without haste. Fire softens into light, sound dissolves into silence, and fragrance settles into awareness. The sages are invited as seven directional knowledge guardians, energizing river banks and consciousness wheels. The lamp becomes scripture of vision, silence becomes prasad of insight. The timing ensures gathering Sangha mirrors old Rishi Mantap formations reimagined for modern seekers. Now, why is lamp rotation central in Saptarishi homage? The lamp rotation is Surya's motion made sacred through flame. The seven clockwise rotations honor the seven archetype, the inner fire, the Atri Soma, discrimination of Bharadwaja, the peace or Vashishta, the power of Vishwamitra, purity of Gautama, and discipline of Jamadagni, and expansion of Kashyapa. Rotation is cyclical, tapas mastery, lifting is rising peace, pause is meditation's doorway, circular wave is ascending prayer, returning as descending grace. In ancient Vedic gatherings, the seven priests operated in perfect rotation symmetry. The flame is proof of remembrance. Movement is Dharma's sevenfold rhythm, influencing senses, planets, swaras, lokas, and consciousness sheets. How does one explain the Rishi presence in a non iconic Aarti? Rishis are not worshipped as forms but as principles behind creations. As light personality dissolves, the Gyan remains. Visible flame is mantra, invisible wisdom is Rishi grace. When awareness watches fire without grasping thought, one enters Rishi Mandala subtly. Kashi tradition calls sages the Chiranjeevi, timeless teachers administering dharma through Manvantara flow. Their influence is felt through seven rivers, the seven swaras, the musical vibrations, the seven lokas, the world dimensions, the seven Agni descriptions, and seven consciousness veils. Aarti is invitation offered upward, blessings rain downward through subtle shadow and silence resonance. Now, what role do bells play in this tradition? The bells carry now the vibration considered purification invoked by sages. Earlier, the Rishi Mandaps used multiple bells. Seven bells were ideal, echoing seven worlds and planetary guidance concepts they transmitted. The Ghanta Nad reflects the discrimination of sound into silence, a bridge between heaven and earth. The bell does not overpower the flame, it frames it like punctuation of light. Kashi believes the sound carries prayers upward while drawing grace downward. Only one who listens without holding sound mentally receives the true blessing behind the peal. Now, why were conch shells used historically and will they return now? Together, the conch or the Saptashankar tradition announced cosmic witness, signaling that rishis embody the sound alchemy, mantra, warfield mastery, and governance yoga integration of knowledge. Today, some centers blow one or three, but the sevenfold blowing existed in older Veda Tantra fusion gatherings at night or midnight, invoking the Atri Soma moon principle at the Art of Living International Center. Conch can return symbolically, not as force but as space making sound, marking the opening of the yagya field. The aim is micro yagya, not mere decibels. Breath carries the conch, the rishi carry the breath. Now, how did the domestic temples preserve the Saptarishi lamp customs? Even now, many small Kashi temples waves the seven diyas in a row. Though Ganga Aarti dominates the collective gatherings, the house temple priests follow the Guru Shishya succession, waving terracotta or egg-faced lamps using bilva, people, chandan bases for stands reflecting tapas, discrimination, and peace archetypes. The sandbank or the platforms, the Reta Vedi of old were replaced by brass stands, but the memory continues orally. No original lyrics survive, but concept survives. The seven teachers, seven directions of guidance, the seven flames of offering, and the seven blessings return. Now, why are flowers and fragrance part of this Vedic arti? The fragrance is expansion principle preserved by Kashyapa archetype. Seven jasmine offerings or Sapta Pushpa reflect Atri Anusaya Bhakti symbolism. In Vedic Aarti, fragrance purifies the senses while flame purifies the mind. Chandan and Bilva denote austerity and meditative peace, linking to Shiva's city where liberation mantras were guarded by sages. The fragrance must never distract awareness from flame. It must cradle it when fragrance, flame, and bell unite. Senses calm, mind sharpens, and awareness opens. This is Rishi invitation through nature, not ornamentation. How does the Indian classical music connected to Saptarishi Aarti symbolism? The sages embody the Nada Brahma transmission. Seven flames echo the seven notes, Sare, Gama, Padhani. Cosmic vibrations they were believed to have cognized. Kashi's Banaras music Gharana survives on this idea that rishis transmitted discrimination of sound into silent insight. In older artis, rhythmic damaru, bell, and conch framed their flame rotations like musical cycles. Now, bell and cymbals remain. The event honors the rishi principles from sound to silence, flame to peace, music to meditation, governance to dharma, and cosmic rhythm to inner stillness. Now, why include the Rishi Sankalpa even when Aarti is dedicated to Shiva or Ganga? Negative, they are mantra drashtas, the first seers of knowledge. All Vedic recitations open ideally with remembrance of ultimate teachers watching through stars. Kashi night worship treats the Aarti flame as Agni plus Ganga fusion, symbol of mastery over fire and flow. The Rishi Tarpan Sankalpa is done daily by priests, especially strong on Pitru Paksh and Thursdays. Even if not sung, their names form unseen seed current behind lamp waving. Whatever karma happens outside is only atmosphere creation. The deeper yagya is within the light observed by awareness. Now, could this be called a micro yagya revival? Precisely, yes, ancient Aarti was structured like closing yagya, rotation, lifting, pause, dissolution into silence. The ghee lamps lit and fire offerings operated simultaneously by Agnihotri Brahmins on sand Vedis. Estimated ghee portions 2.5 kg in some Mantap customs reflect dedication, not literal requirement. Now, the essence is Samarpan Bhava, the attitude of offering without clinging to visible ritual environment. Seven rotations are seven archetypes of tapas, truth, seva, knowledge, compassion, discipline, discrimination. The event is visible mantra culminating into invisible flame of insight. Now, how does astronomy influence the Rishi lamp rituals? The seven stars of Ursa Major guided celestial navigation in ancient India called Saptaraksha. Lamp rotations mirrored apparent sun motion, constellation rising in direction, guardianship of knowledge. The timing honored the solar star transitions, planet principal days, rivers, and swaras. Aarti rotations were right hand clockwise, always sustaining cosmic motion in harmony. The star concept governs the symbolic presence, ego dissolution, guidance, and witness exchange. Now, science halls don't require star charts overhead, but rishis are invoked as cosmic coordinates for minds as navigation into silence. Now, in this ceremony, what is the pedagogical relevance for students and faculty? Stress for marks, exams, placements, and careers and placements by professors signing MOUs has risen sharply in modern education. The Aarti anchors the principle that knowledge beings energize river banks, while lamps swing as offerings rather than occupations. Rishis represent the lineage of ultimate recitation, cosmic guidance of governance, yoga integration of knowledge. Observing a flame calmly is meditation's pause principle. Discriminations is lamp, peace is rise principle, cyclical masteries is a rotation principle. This helps the education sector return from environment stress obsession into awareness viewing clarity. Now, why is silence placed at the conclusion of lamp worship? The Kashi holds that the silence following flame viewing is the entry point into Rishi Mandala. The rishis symbolize movement dissolved into awareness. Lamps are lifted, paused, rotated, dissolved into silence like Vedic Yagya completion. The lamp is prasad of vision, silence is prasad of insight. Even in bhakti movement times, rishi symbolism was preserved through poetic silence after prayer, not through written lyrics. The silence isn't emptiness, it is womb of cognition where sages exist as invisible flame beyond form. Now, what leadership symbolism emerges from a seven priest formation? Neither the seven priests donated the seven teachers, the seven worlds, seven directions, seven flames, seven blessings exchange, mirroring the ancient Kashi ideal. The archetype of Raj Rishi blending governance with spirituality influences Kashi ritual leadership models. The priests do not worship personality but universal gyan, universal arpan. Leadership is expressed through symmetry, pause, lifting, rotation, not domination. The gathering mirrors the Rishi Sangha concept, collective presence without ego imposition. Each priest a flame of peace, purity, discipline, power, discrimination, expansion, and inner fire. Now, how do the wood bases like Bilwa, People, Chandan relate symbolically? These are platforms of tapas, the Bilwa, meditation for people, peace for Chandan, the cradle, Rishi homage. Kashi used sand platforms earlier, wood and Chandan fragrance based holders evolved later. Each element calms the senses while flame uplifts the awareness. The wood is not fuel, it is seat of offering. The fire, older than creations, is ignorance, rest, and awareness, watching the flame, not in the base burning. The Bilwa leaves its tripetal symbolism mirrors the austerity triad preserved in Rishi disciplines. Now, how do the Saptaswar and seven chakras interpretation align? Jagannathan, later Kashi philosophy integrated the Yoga Rishi symbolism, seeing seven flames as seven energy centers, but this was always symbolic. Saptarishi influence sound vibration into silence vibration. Aarti rotation honors the sound cycles, the pause honors the chakra doorway into meditation. Now, the sages mastered sound, planets, rivers, worlds, and awareness layers. This lamp honors illumination over ignorance, but the final blessing is not sensory stimulation but awareness awakening. Yoga is inclusion of rishi wisdom into eternal internal cognition, not external anatomy worship. Now, what ensures this event is not ritual entanglement but awareness offering? Like as Gurudev says, karma outside is only to build atmosphere. Yajna happens within the lamp, observed without mental grasping. The event must encourage pause, silence, fragrance, tattva balance, planetary guru tattva timing, and cosmic witness exchange. The lamps purify the senses, the rishis purify the mind. Neither should overpower the awareness. The gathering is incomplete without the rishi mantra energy, but complete only when dissolving into silence. This ensures the path is light, sound, fragrance, mantra, river, and consciousness integrated into awareness. Now, how does the Pitru Paksh Tarpan relate to Rishi homage? Together in Kashi, offerings for ancestors and cosmic sages happen together. Tarpan for rishis is done at the Dasha Shavamed and Manikandika Ghat. The lamp worship integrates offering field for ancestors and teachers beyond time. For 7th Manvantara era, rishis administer the dharma subtly. The flame is proof of remembrance offered upward, blessing exchange flows downward. This year's ceremony doesn't replace Tarpan, it expands its field into a global meditation knowledge hall where cosmic teachers are remembered silently through flame sense purification. Now, is Thursday truly strongest for Rishi worship and why today too? Jagdev, yes, because it embodies the Brihaspati, the Guru Tattva, the cosmic teacher principle. Kashis is astrology, the Veda chanting schools, Ayurveda lineages of Kashyap Samhita, Dharma Sutra traditions of Gautama and Vashishta, and Yatra roots preserve Rishi influence, especially on Thursdays. Scholars and priests see this day as most receptive to Jnanadeep, the universal lamp of cognition, holding the first Saptarishi Aarti in 2025 on a Guru aligned window at an international center like Art of Living Center respects the original spirit even outside Kashi's geography. The day supports awareness watching over ritual mechanics, allowing mantra to silence flow to complete like a perfect closing micro yagya. Cosmology and pedagogy converge here for seekers, modern seekers stressed by education and careers. Now, why are Saptarishi not treated as elite by wealth but elite by tapas? Their elite status is spiritual, not economic. They were Tapasvi, Mantra Drashta, Agnihotri ritual masters, the founders of Gotra, the Dharma Sutra, Ayurveda, Jyotish, and Nada Shastra, and Rajrishi governance Gyan integration. Wealth defined no lineage. Here, lineage defined wealth of consciousness. Their presence is conceptual. The 7 stars is equal to guidance, 7 flames is equal to offerings, the 7 shadows is grace returned. Elite here means clarity, peace, power, purity, discipline, expansion, and inner fire, not a hierarchy opposition. Hosting the Aarti now at a global center under Gurudev shows the revival of elite by awareness, seva, knowledge, dissolution into silence, not social stratification. The flame is knowledge, older than creations is ignorance, and available to all without admission fee. Now, how do modern participants receive Rishi blessings without a physical form? The blessing flows through awareness drishti, the conscious viewing, sound dissolved into silence, the samarpan bhava. The lamp is considered visible mantra, the sages are invisible flame of insight. When devotion watches flame without thought grasping, the mind crosses the 7 inner fatigue layers. Blessing is not requested, it is returned by witness exchange. The rishis provide influences senses, the planets, the rivers, the swaras, the worlds in cognition cheat silently. Modern seekers receive it through presence, pause, silence, the breath awareness, gratitude, non clinging observation, the same gateway Kashi preserved orally. Knowledge halls here become symbolic river banks of consciousness, and Gurudev becomes living transmission point, completing the metaphysical circuit. Now, why is the Aarti said to be poetry of light in Kashi belief? Neither because no original lyrics survived, the scripture became movement of flame itself, rotation, lifting, pause, dissolution. This is ritual poetry. The flame is prasad of vision. The pause is a prasad of meditation. The silence is prasad of insight. The lamp carries prayer upward, shadow carries grace downward. Light and sound unite into silent awareness. The rishi real drishti, real rishi drishti. Bhakti era saints revived this symbolism while preserving the rishi archetypes internally. Kashi is called the city of light and liberation because liberation was felt through illumination followed by dissolution into silence. This year, 5:30 to 7 p.m. on 4th of December segment follows the same poetic arc, not written but seen, offered, and dissolved, making it authentic by spirit. Now, how does Ayurveda connect sage Kashyap to lamp worship customs? The Kashyap Samhita and ancient pediatric Ayurveda texts influenced many Vaidya lineages traveling on Narmada Kashi Yatra routes. Kashyap archetypes represents expansion and nourishment, just as ghee nourishes flame without aggression. The lamp uses ghee because it embodies the knowledge offered without conflict, supporting health to calm senses to sharp cognition sequence. The fragrance of chandan and bilva austerity principles calm the sensory field. Before flame viewing, many Kashi Brahmins belong to Kashyap Gotra, preserving Rishi remembrance and daily sankalpa, bringing it to a center known for well-being, panchakarma, meditation, and breath science. Respects the original Ayur yogic intention, lamp as cognitive medicine, not spectacle. Now, what is the link between the Saptarishi and the concept of seven Agni forms? Like the Vedas describe the multiple forms of Agni. The Sapta Agni symbolism places rishis as second cosmic witnesses after fire. The lamp is not random flame, it represents the Gyan older than ignorance, fire transmuted into light. The lamp circles the Sapta Archideepa Mandala, historically created rings of flame around a sacred space. The sages mastered fire through tapas, the observation, then observation through silence. The lamp now becomes a meditation instrument, the Agni observed, not grasped. The seven flame symbolism later influenced the chakra interpretations, but remains fundamentally cosmological. This event restores the Agni from ritual possession to ritual observation, completing yagya by awareness, not embellishment. Now, how did the Bhakti movement reshape the Rishi Aarti symbolism in Kashi? Negative, the bhakti did not erase the Veda, it softened it into accessibility. Saints retained the Rishi archetypes as internal seed even when singing Shiva or Ganga stotras. The emphasis shifted to lights as darshan plus silence absorption, not written lyrics. The sages symbolized tapas, truth, compassion, the mantra clarity, values echoed by bhakti teachers like Tulsidas and Ravidas. Lamp worship languages diversified, but format remained Guru Shishya succession, clockwise rotations, pauses, silence after flame, fragrance without distraction. This year continues the Bhakti evolution. Global seekers participate, but the sages are honored the same way Kashi honored leaders. Governance through Gyan, leadership without ego. Now, how does the Sudarshan Kriya and meditation align philosophically with Rishi Aarti? Negative. Kriya purifies the inner environment, a lamp purifies the outer senses, Rishis purify the mind, meditation dissolves the mind. The sequence is identical breath to senses to mind to silence. The sages represent sound into silence mastery. Kriya represents the breath into stillness mastery. The Aarti represents the fire into illumination mastery. When a seeker finishes flame viewing and enters silence, the cognitive nervous system undergoes the same dissolution that meditation aims for. Holding the ceremony in a center known for stress relief, breath science creates a perfect field convergence of fire, breath, sound, silence, remembrance, and expansion. Now, what is the relevance of terracotta diyas in the historical narration of Kashi lamps? Like the ancient Kashi lamps were simple terracotta, egg face, or punch face, close to earth element. Simplicity prevented ritual entanglement and kept the focus on flame observation. The Panchamuki lamp symbolized the five elements, seven flames symbolize the seven sages. The terracotta absorbed that heat softly, mirroring moksha fire softened into light, not spectacle. This year, terracotta diyas may return symbolically, but authenticity is not material. It is spirit of simplicity and awareness preserved from Kashi into modern halls. Earth cradles fire as a base. Awareness cradles flame as blessing. Now, why is Aarti considered a nightly invitation and not completion? Neither because rishis are beyond time, invitation is renewed daily, lamp is offering lifted upward, blessing returns downward. Completion happens only after silence absorption. Arti without pause is incomplete yagya. The event reminds that knowledge seers energize consciousness silently, not socially. This year's 5:30 to 7 p.m. window makes invitation spacious instead of transactional. The sages are not completed, they are welcomed again through flame. Now, how do the seven rivers symbolism influence the Saptarishi worship in Kashi Parampara? Jagannatha, the Kashi Rishis represents the guardians of the seven sacred rivers and are honored on river banks through arghya offerings linking waters' flow with fires' glow. Through Godavari, though Godavari, Narmada, and Ganga carry specific Rishi legacies, Gautam, Atrisoma, and Agni Ganga fusion principles. In Kashi, the rivers are not separate from divinity but living goddesses. The ceremony at the International Center symbolically becomes a riverbank of consciousness where water may be absent physically but present conceptually through mantra and lamp reflection customs. Rivers cleanse senses, flames cleanse awareness, rishis cleanse the mind. This convergence sustains the same dharma circuit Kashi preserved across yatra routes and priest lineages into inner silence. Now, how does the Pitru and Rishi offerings unite without contradiction? In Kashi cosmology, ancestors and cosmic teachers share the same offering field of remembrance. Tarpan and Deep Yagya operate together because both are beyond time circuits. One linear lineage, the one stellar lineage. The flame is knowledge older than ignorance. The priest's sankalpa includes ancestors and rishis in seed form, even if not spoken publicly. The lamp carries prayer upward, shadow carries grace downward. No contradiction arises when offering is done without clinging to external environment. As karma outside builds atmosphere, but yajna completes inside awareness. The 2025 ceremony expands this union into a global center where cognition, gratitude, and knowledge descend together into silence. Now, what defines authenticity when original lyrics did not survive? Authenticity is defined not by written shlokas but by format fidelity, simplicity of flame, clockwise right hand rotations, pauses before raising or dissolving, and silence at conclusion. The Guru Tattva timing, sevenfold archetype honoring, and witness exchange bhava. Kashi preserved it orally and symbolically, even though turbulence of history. Through turbulence of history. This year is authentic because it follows the Rishi motion cosmology, sound to silence pedagogy, non-iconic Gyan worship, and closing micro yagya structure. The lamp becomes scripture of vision, silence becomes commentary of insight. Now, what governance Gyan principle inspired the term Rajrishi? Jagdev Vishwamitra founded the Rajrishi archetype leadership rooted in mantra power and inner discipline, not in military or wealthy hierarchy alone. In Kashi, belief leaders were honored if they governed through jnana, discrimination, power, purity, peace, discipline, expansion, and tapas, the seven flames of leadership values. Priest formations mirrored this by serving without ego dominance, swinging lamps for cosmic wisdom rather than personal exaltation. The event at the Art of Living International Center conveys that modern governance too must graduate from environment obsession to awareness leadership, exactly the principle rishis embodied for dharma administration. Now, how does the Gayatri Mantra act as opening of Rishi lineage ceremonies? Jayurdev Gayatri was revealed by Vishwamitra and became the Pratham invocation for light and consciousness orientation. Kashi's Veda schools chant Rishi Suktas before starting river or Shiva Aartis in older paramparas. Gayatri is cognitive sunrise before flame, even if not chanted loudly. Now, its spirit is implicit illumination, discrimination, guidance, and witness. At this ceremony, the time 5:30 p.m. itself acts like Gayatri, transition from outer to inner light, preparing the mind to watch flame without grasping. Now, why are lamps made of ghee considered soft fire and not aggressive fire? Jagadev, ghee nourishes flame without conflict, symbolizing offer without battle. Ancient texts speak of seven forms of Agni, and lamps created the seven circle symbolic mandals. For sages, fire was first witness, Rishi second, but later lamp worship became fire transmuted into accessible illumination. Aggressive fire burns fuel, soft fire burns ignorance. When watched without grasping, this year continues that alchemy, ghee for offering, awareness for completion, and silence for blessing absorption. Now, how did the Veda chanting schools influence the Kashi lamp traditions? Kashi's Veda Pathshalas preserve the Bharadwaj and Vashishta Dharma Sutra and Sukta chanting influencing timing, clockwise movement, bell nath discrimination, and lamp offering structure. Schools honor the rishis before chanting as ultimate recitation lineage. The Aarti concept spread into household and public river Aartis. This year's International Center ceremony becomes a modern Pathshala of breath, silence, light, cognition, honoring the same influencers. Now, explain the Gyandeep concept and its guardian sages. Jagadev Gyandeep is the lamp of knowledge, is guarded by Saptarishi archetypes. Light offered upward is remembrance. Insight received downward is blessing. The lamp does not glorify personality but universal cognition. When washed with awareness, it removes the inner fatigue veils. The hall, veranda, priests, seekers all represent Saptarishi as internal gyan influences guiding senses, mind, and silence. How does fragrance support cognitive absorption without distraction? Like the Bilva people Chandan bases historically cradled lamps, releasing sattva fragrance subtly. Jasmine offerings reflected bhakti influence. Fragrance purifies senses, flame purifies awareness, but fragrance must cradle flame, not compete with it. This ceremony guides sensory feel into calm so mind can watch flame without grasping thought dissolving into silence. Now, what ensures seekers don't get entangled in environment karma? Excel karma builds environment internal awareness completes yajna. Lamps are swung, lifted, paused, dissolved, reminding that mastery is not possession of ritual tools but non clinging observation. The sages energize bank silently, while lamp energizes senses visibly. The two never trap awareness. Now, how does Ganga become conceptual even at the center, not in Kashi? Jagradav Ganga is not only water, it is flow principle invoked by mantra intention and priest sankalpa. Kashi believes sages energize the river banks, the center that energizes millions through breath science becomes a river of consciousness. So lamp viewed here links back to same metaphysical circuit. Now why call it visible mantra, invisible flame? Jagradav, because Aarti is proof of remembrance seen by eyes. The Rishi blessings are flame cognition felt in silence both unite into awareness. Now, why are seven rotations universal rather than personal? There is seven is guidance, worlds, nodes, rivers, Agni consciousness layers, universal Vedic numbers, not personality worship. Now, how do the seven shadows relate? Shadows symbolize descending grace, opposite of ascending flame offerings. Now, what is the ultimate exchange cycle? Seven teachers, seven flames, seven blessings, silence, absorption. Why must priests serve without ego dominance? This follows the Rajarishi leadership model governed by awareness, not hierarchy or possession. Now, what is a Rishi Prasad in flame worship? Darshan for eyes, a discrimination for mind, silence for awareness. How does this help stress the education and the service sector? Flame viewing calms the senses, Rishi principles calm the mind, and silence resets the awareness. Mirror Kriyas stress relief sequence. What is a philosophical closing arc? Invocation, illumination, dissolution into silence. Now, what is the message for 2025 ceremony? Jagadav, the lamp is history older than ignorance, a message older than script, blessing older than life, offer light, don't hold it, watch flame, don't grasp it, end in silence and don't escape it, Jagadav. Now, what is the relationship between the Saptarishi, the seven sacred rivers, and lamp offerings when taking the Kashi Parampara beyond geography? The Saptarishi are revered in the Vedic worldview not as historic forest hermits alone, but as cosmic pillars holding sacred knowledge currents. Their collective consciousness is believed to channel through the concept of seven sacred rivers known as Saptanadi, which includes the Ganga, the Godavari, which is Gautami, the Narmada, the Yamuna, the Saraswati, the Sindhu, and Kaveri in the classical sacred rivers mapping. In Kashi, Ganga is considered a living goddess, not a symbolic river. Hence, lamp offerings to the river are equivalent to offering into a conscious field. The sages are honored on these rivers' banks because they mastered the Agni or the fire and Apa or the water together, the twin elements of transformation and flow. The belief is that rivers cleanse the senses while fire illuminates the awareness. Rishis purify the mind that observes both. Now, when this ceremony shifts into a global center like the Art of Living International Center, the physical water of Ganga is replaced by the flow of collective consciousness of seva and breath science, and that Deja functions like a river of purification. Gurudev's presence becomes a confluence point similar to a tirtha, where subtle fields are stronger than physical coordinates. The lamp still rises in clockwise Surya style rotation, offering upward, the blessings descend like shadow and grace. The act remains authentic not by location but by psychological fidelity of invitation, illumination, dissolutions, and silence absorption. The sages reside beyond time and form, so when the lamp is offered with awareness, the rishis are invoked. The ritual does not transport a city, it transports bhava, witness, and awareness. which are older than written lyrics and newer than temple walls. This is Sanatan Dharma expressed as universal Gyan offered into universal Arpan, where the river is consciousness and the flame is remembrance. Now, explain why the lamp rotation, the lifting, the pause, and dissolution are considered a cognitively scripted movement rather than decorative Aarti mechanics. Together in Kashi's ancient wisdom, the Aarti was never intended as choreographed spectacle. It was a language of cognition expressed through flame mechanics. Every rotation of the lamp mirrors a cosmic process perceived by rishis, the apparent motion of the sun, the cyclical tapas journey, and the orbit of awareness moving from gross to subtle. Seven clockwise rotations are not arbitrary. They honor the seven cognitive archetypes of the Saptarishi, Atri, the inner fire of intuition, and Soma flow cool observation, the Bharadwaja, the Yagya, the discrimination, and Shruta knowledge precision. Vasista is peace, a law through memory of Dharma Sutra stability, and Sattva mind, and Vishwamitra is power, governance navigated by mantra and Rajrishi leadership. Gautama is purity, cognitive pause of meditation, and riverbank energization concept, the Jamadagni, the discipline, the fire mastery without aggression, and ring of flame protocols, and Kashyap is for expansion, sensory nourishment, Ayurvedic cognitive medicine, and integration. Lifting the lamp upward signifies the moment the jnana rises above ignorance, yet the pause that follows is more sacred. It is the gap between stimulus and reaction. This is identical to meditation's doorway. When you pause before mentally owning an experience, awareness deepens. In the old tradition, priests would rotate, raise the lamp to eye level, then above the head, hold a still moment, and dissolve the motion into nirvikalpa style silence. This was considered a real offering, not the motion itself, but the observer's non clinging state during the motion. The camphor, the bells, the fragrance, and fire were supporting elements, but never allowed to compete. The lamp was a darshan mantra. The pause was the mind's initiation, and the silence was the blessing's entry point. Rotation was scripture, lifting was interpretation, pause was initiation, and dissolution was moksha. Today, when this pattern is revived at a global center, it remains cognitively faithful. It teaches modern seekers, especially the stressed students and faculty, that mastery is not perfection of environment but perfection of attention and surrender, where you see light without grasping it, when you witness flame without owning it mentally, the invisible rishi flame of insight enters the nervous system, burning centuries of inner fatigue and stress layers silently without harming the sensory or emotional ecology. This is cognition disguised as ritual. Now, why were the original Saptarishi Aarti lyrics never prioritized for preservation? And how did oral parampara protect the essence more reliably than manuscripts? Neither the ancient Kashi ritual culture drew a sharp distinction between written instruction and realized transmission. The Saptarishi were never revered as poets composing evening hymns for documentation, but as mantra drashtas, the primordial seers who saw knowledge rather than wrote it. The focus of their worship was not on lyrical ownership, but on darshan of flame plus awareness dissolution. Lyrics, therefore, were not the core. The fire was the text, the hand motion was the meter, the pause was the meaning, and the silence was the commentary. That is why manuscripts were not the medium for evening lamp rituals. The medium was the mind of the priest and the awareness of the seeker. The oral parampara in Kashi, transmitted through Agnihotri Brahmins, Jyotish families, and Ayurveda Vaidya lineages, and temple priests protected the essence through practiced repetition, not syllable repetition. Seven sages already influenced the seven planets, the seven swaras, the seven rivers, the seven worlds, and the seven consciousness sheets, seven Agni forms, and seven leadership archetypes. The Aarti poem did not need to describe them, they were already implied by the number seven, and the sensory architecture. Oral repetition ensured that form never trapped awareness because, unlike manuscripts, oral teachings could evolve tone, language, rhythm, and pedagogy without losing underlying cosmology of intent. Now, Kashi preserved the rituals inside the Dashash Ved, the Manikarnika, the Tulsi Ravidas, and the Tirtha Yatra circuits, adding Rishi Sankalpa silently in every generation. This made the practice resilient to innovations, climate, political upheaval, and linguistic shifts. Oral parampara was considered a living river. If the water evaporates, the current still exists. Similarly, if lyrics were lost, The wisdom still glows through flame. In 2025, when the first ever articulated Saptarishi Aarti reaches the Art of Living International Center, it is essentially the rematerialization of an unwritten hymn preserved in memory temples, breath, and awareness watching. The venue becomes new, but the witness circuit is old. This is why the event does not borrow legitimacy from manuscripts. It inherits it from cognition. The lamp is the original text. Gurudev is the transmission point. Silence is the final scripture. Now, what is the historical and spiritual purpose of bell, the ghanta, the cymbals, and the conch of the shankha in Rishi oriented Aarti gatherings, and how does the sound purify differently from silence? The sound and silence are different halves of the same Vedic nervous system. In older Kashi Rishi Aarti mandaps, the ghanta or the bells were rung not to awaken gods but to awaken the senses of the worshipper, preparing them for awareness. The sages were considered the second witness after Agni. So sound announced witness, not deity arrival. The seven bells symbolize the seven worlds, the lokas, and the planetary teacher circuits of Brihaspati Guru influence, framing the flame into cognitive punctuation. The symbols or the kartal or the manjira stabilize rhythm, acting like a breath meter, externalize, ensuring lamp rotations held equal intervals like Shruti alignment. The rhythm is not musical entertainment but time symmetry held by sound, mirroring the Rishi mastery over cyclical motion. The conch or the Sapta Sankha blowing historically marked the cosmic announcement, calling the invisible into the visible without personal battle. The Shankha was breath driven, not force driven, symbolizing the mantra warfield alchemy where power is guided by peace. The sound purifies by organizing the sensory environment, sharpening hearing, stabilizing the rhythm, and clearing the cognitive noise and preventing scatter. But silence purifies by dissolving the mental owner of the experience. The Kashi Parampara always used both the sound to gather, silence to absorb. Sound carries a prayer upward and silence carries grace inward. Sound is reverses ripple, silence is reverses depth. If sound dominates, it becomes distraction. If silence is avoided, the blessing cannot enter. In 2025, bell and cymbals frame the lamp, but after lamp rotation completes, all sound must dissolve into intentional silence. This teaches that not sound alone, but sound recognized and released into silence creates purification. Gurudev's presence ensures that power, discrimination, peace, purity, discipline, expansion, and intuition are delivered as inner cognition prasad, not outer sonic spectacle. Now, how do materials like bilwa, people, chandan, jasmine flowers, terracotta, ghee, and camphor create sensory psychology supporting the Rishi homage? In Kashi's older traditions, materials were selected not for aesthetics but for sensory ecology and psychological preparation. Bilva wood, the leaf bases, symbolizes tapas, austerity, cooling. The flame seeds sacred to Shiva and thus harmonious for Atri's inner Agnisoma archetype. The people platforms represent the meditative stability, cognitive discrimination held without reaction. The Chandan of the sandalwood base is a cradle lamp fragrance in Sattva, peace archetype of Vasishta, ensuring calm surroundings before illumination. Jasmine flowers, the Sapta Pushpa tradition represent bhakti softness preserved by Atri Anasuya principles of devotion, fragrance of prayer without restlessness. The terracotta diyas were used because earth absorbs the heat softly, fire rests in awareness, not in metal aggression. The ghee lamps nourish a flame like cognitive medicine, expansion, and nourishment archetype of Rishi Kashyapa, father of many Gotras and Ayurveda knowledge sustainability. Camphor Aarti segments historically placed at midnight burned sensory fatigue first, then dissolved into awareness, now seen as a symbolism of fire turned to light, then light turned to silence. Together, these materials purify the indriyas of the senses without hijacking awareness. The sages purify minds, so materials purify senses that watch flame. This year's global ceremony remains true by reproducing the psychological architecture, fragrance without distraction, earth holding fire, ghee nourishing the flame, and flower offering lifting mind upward, camphor dissolving fatigue, and bell framing cognition, silence completing the yagya. The aim is not grandiosity but balance of fire plus flow plus fragrance plus silence, allowing Rishi blessings to enter the nervous system without spectatorship mentality, making the modern center a true river bank of consciousness under a living master's presence. Now, Gurudev's physical presence during the first performance, how does it transform the ritual energetics? Like when a master like His Holiness Gurudev Shri Ravi Shankarji sits in a sacred field during a ritual, the act shifts from invocation to reception. In ancient times, rishis lit lamps to invite the cosmic mind. Today, the cosmic mind is embodied in a realized consciousness presiding over the ritual. The fire offered is visible, but the transmission happens in the unspoken field Gurudev holds. The rotation of the lamp becomes not just circumambulation, but an axis alignment and energetic production around awareness itself. The Saptarishi are mantra drishtas, those who saw sound. Gurudev is a silence drishta, one who sees sound dissolve into its origin. When the seven lamps or the seven flames are held before him, each flame carries a distinct archetype of austerity, stability, devotion, expansion, justice, healing, and ecology. But in his presence, the flames are not seeking anything, they are surrendering everything into the ocean or presence. This creates a rare moment where the ritual does not try to purify space because the space itself purifies the ritual. People believe artis generate energy, but in reality, they absorb it from the presence around them. That is why tradition says fire carries prayer, but knowledge carries fire. With Gurudev presiding from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. on the 4th of December, the Aarti becomes a living meditation encoded in light, where seekers witness not just the rishis above the flame, but the flame witnessing them. The moment is less about performance and more about darshan. The lamp sees you before you see it. This elevates the ritual from historical homage to timeless participation. Now, why was the time slot 5:30 p.m. historically symbolic in Kashi's Vedic calendar? In Kashi's ritual psyche, 5:30 p.m. is Sandhya's crown moment, neither explicit daytime nor full night. In ancient Vedic reckoning, it corresponds to the transition when the Saptarksa constellation first becomes subtly visible to the initiated eye. While common people look at the lamp during Aarti, the Vedic priests historically looked at the sky after lighting the lamp. The lamp was a ground star, the constellation was a sailing lamp. This hour belonged to the Rishi Smarana Vrata, a time for mantra recitation, tarpan, and the inner vow renewal. Even in the invisible Saptarishi Aarti tradition of Kashi, the emphasis was not on mass gathering but yogic transmission and transition of attention from form to formless. This timing aligns the prana's movement upward in the body to the perception of rishis upward in the sky. The Vedic astronomy and the Vedic spirituality were not separate. They mirrored each other. The seven sages governed the Saptalokas, the Saptapranas, the Saptaswaras, and the Saptaritus. Lighting Aarti at this hour encoded their remembrance into breathing patterns of the city itself. The ritual's time window was always the real mantra. The lamp was only its frame. In 2025, performing it at exactly this revived hour at the Art of Living International Center recreates the ancient Kashi intention but now amplified by global participation rather than local authority, including on YouTube, where people from all over the world can join online. The sands of Kashi track time through stars. Now, the Art of Living International Center tracks stars through awareness. So, while the ritual seems new, the time is ancient. Now, many rituals exist in Kashi. What makes Saptarishi Aarti uniquely different from Ganga Aarti or Shiva Aarti? The difference is philosophical. Ganga Aarti worships flow, the Shiva Aarti worships dissolution, the Saptarishi Aarti worships the one who witnessed both the creation of flow and the dissolution of form. This ritual belongs to the parampara of knowledge, not deity. The deity Aartis are offerings into form. Saptarishi Aarti is an offering into origins. It honors the seers who cognize the mantras, not the embodiments of mantras. Historically, it had seven flames representing the seven Gyan archetypes. While other artis use a singular flame representing a singular devotion, the Ganga Aarti, the river receives the lamp. In Shiva Aarti, the space receives the lamp, but the Saptarishi Aarti, the mediator, receives the lamp. It is inward facing even when outwardly performed. Priests use dhoop, bells, conch, and fine notation, but the climax is always silence, never sound. The ritual teaches that you do not see truth by the lamp, you see truth by the mind that saw the lamp. The arti ends in pause, so the flame can dissolve into perception and become memory, not experience. That's why it never historically scaled, because its aim was depth, not reach. But hosting it in Gurudev's presence globalizes its depth without diluting it. For stressed students and faculty, it teaches prioritizing awareness over outcomes. It shifts the mind from chasing success to embodying the intelligence that leads to success. This makes it a visible and Vedic psychology ritual encoded in Bhakti's language but Gyan's outcome. Now, were the Saptarishi considered elite or accessible beings in Vedic social structure? Historically, Jagadam elite in realization, not in privilege. The Saptarishi were not aristocratic by birth. They were elevated because they held society's most refined resources, the mantra cognition, intellectual clarity, justice systems, medicine, agriculture, ecology, cosmology, psychology, music, linguistics, law, diplomacy, and even statescraft. They were advisors to kings, yet above kings. They lived minimal lives, often outside cities, yet shaped the inner functioning of cities. Their elite status was functional, not hierarchical. They were revered not because they ruled, but because they served invisible governance, season cycles, planetary astronomy, student cognition, medicinal herbs, and dharma transmission, and environmental sustenance. Each Rishi archetype represented a mastery domain, exhalation, precision, inhalation, expansion, inner peace, outer responsibility. Reverence toward them was obligatory for priests but optional for householders. The ritual of seven lamps existed to remind society of intelligence precedes power, justice precedes victory, and ecology precedes civilization. Silence precedes the scripture. Modern misunderstanding calls them elite, but Vedic systems call them necessary. Performing their Aarti before Gurudev now bridges both worlds, the ancient cognition and living accessibility. Now, how was the lamp configured historically when honoring the Saptarishi in Kashi or Vedic yagyas? Jagadav, historically, the lamps were configured not for spectacle but symbolism. Either one lamp with seven wicks, the seven separate lamps moving in ascending order, or seven flames held on a single rotating thal, designed from copper or terracotta. Ghee or sesame oil was used depending on season or cosmic intention. Each flame corresponded to one sage and one internal principle. The priest would light quietly, rotate precisely, elevate gradually, and conclude not with applause but mantra pause. The lamp was considered a portable homakunda, small yagya itself. The wicks were seven pranas, the ghee was devotion, the flame was cognition, the smoke was purification, the observer was the final ahuti, nothing was external. Ritual aimed to draw attention into witness consciousness. This flame psychology, now transferred into modern breath based kriyas and meditations, keeps the root correct. At the Art of Living Center, the time is fixed but intention remains cosmic. Gurudev's presence simply receives what was always offered knowledge into silence through light. Now, why was silence emphasized at the end of ancient Saptarishi Aartis while other Aartis continue mantra chanting? Because rishis did not transmit deities, they transmitted cognition. Mantras invite God, silence invites mantra origin. Rishis govern the transition between sound and source. When the final lamp rotation was completed, priests would stop all instruments, not because ritual ended, but because the real ritual began in perception. Tradition held that what you chant belongs to the deity, what you cannot chant belongs to the rishi. Silence was seen as the eighth unseen lamp that holds all seven seen lamps. Scholars believe the rishis composed the scripture, but scripture says the rishis composed a mind capable of receiving the scripture. Silence acknowledges that hierarchy. In modern revival, silence is preserved not by quitting sound, but by entering the breath awareness. Gurudev presided at 5:30 to 7 p.m. embodies that silence, not absence of sound, but presence of origin. That pause will be a darshan, not conclusion. Now, this ritual is being revived in a modern global spiritual center. Lord Kashi, does this dilute the authenticity? Now, the authenticity lies in intentional fidelity, not geographic ownership. Kashi preserved the metaphysical seed, art of living globalizes the sapling without altering its DNA. Gurudev himself revived the breath-based yagyas like Sudarshan Kriya, rituals performed with prana instead of locks. Here to the lamp is mantra, the presence is silence, and the offering is witness consciousness. Students today are drowning in outcome pressure, the marks, the careers, the placements, the parental expectation, the faculty stress. Rishis represent cognition without anxiety, hosting their Aarti in Gurudev's presence teaches. Knowledge should be received in presence, not memorized in pressure. The ritual's job is to mimic the mind elevation, and the master's job is to dissolve mimicry into reality. That is happening here, far from diluting authenticity. The center democratizes depth in ancient Kashi. The seven priests perform, thousands witness here. The seven flames perform, millions participate internally. That is not distortion, it is evolution with respect. Now, what is the message for the modern world encoded in performing the Saptarishi Aarti? at 5:30 to 7 p.m. in a spiritual MOU driven era. Jagadev, the encoded message is reassurance to remembrance. Society now signs MOUs to teach meditation and Sudarshan Kriyas because minds are overworked, teachers are overburdened, and parents are overthinking, students are under pressure. The Saptarishis represent the seven stable pillars of mind training older than institutional education itself. Performing their Aarti at a fixed revived hour in the presence of a living master encodes the ancient reminder intelligence needs gratitude. Success needs justice and education needs peace. Healing needs ecology and expansion needs discipline. Scripture needs silence and transmission needs presence. This ritual is not anti modern, it is pre modern psychology offered into postmodern stress. The lamps as movement is symbolic syllabus of the mind. The stillness afterward is graduation. Jai Gurudev.